One thing that frustrated me to no end when it comes to Palworld was Skil Fruit, or Pal skills in general. You see, when we were streaming and I got a new mount, I threw a bunch of Skil Fruit on him that I thought were pretty good, that seemed pretty decent. They had a low cooldown, which is great for when you're starting out. But when I was using them, their supposed 2-second cooldown was more like 4 or 5, because you're stuck in an animation of them casting it. You can't activate the skill because they're recovering from them just casting it. It's very strange. So for a while going, I was hoping to find a video that explained the weird nuance of Skil Fruit. I could be bad at looking. I looked for it. It's not there. So if you get me, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to that. But some of the takeaways we found on stream were extremely interesting. One of them being, yes, the weird funkiness of animations being really bad. You not being able to move and being vulnerable for a long time turns out really bad. Another thing is the whole skill power rating is way off. There were level 60 power rating PAL skills that were massively out DPSing power level 160 skills that were epic and didn't have the longest cooldown you've ever seen. Also, did you know there's 2 separate cooldowns, one for you and then one for your mount? We'll talk about all these things in a second, what skills are actually worth using and the whole shebang. But before we do, here's a quick disclaimer. My goal here is not to try to get into the nitty-gritty of all of these scaling numbers and the damage things and the cooldowns and all of those things. I simply want an answer that I was looking for, and that was what skill has the most to leverage and or perfectly caters to my type of playstyle. So that's what I tried to do today, and I think we got pretty damn close. Another disclaimer, I do know that there are intrinsic weaknesses in Palworld, meaning I know water is weak to something, I know electric is weak to something, but I've never had to deal with this in any conceivable way in Palworld. Most of the time, because the skills I use are different elements. It's pretty easy to slap on a couple different elements, and also our findings. There's clearly like a kingpin in every element that is clearly the best. And the last disclaimer, the gameplay that you guys are currently seeing is me trying to get a baseline, or me showing you guys what is the best bang for your buck whilst trying to constrict as much as possible. The dummy has no inherent weakness or resistance, and I try to keep my PAL as low level as possible, something I think is indicative of what we're kind of looking for. Lastly, all of your damage comes from traits, condensing, and that statue, which I can't think of the name of. So we are seeing the very, very bottom of the bucket as far as when it comes to maximizing the damage output we're trying to find. Again, I was just trying to find a baseline, see what kind of stood above the rest just on a base. So you guys could go absolutely crazy when you do heavily condense and heavily amplify the base attack, which we'll definitely be doing in the video as well. Anyways, on with the video, just thought I mentioned that. So now we can finally begin. First things first, let's streamline this entire process. We're gonna be talking about the big takeaways I got, and then at the end of the video, we'll talk about all the skills that are worth their weight that don't necessarily fit into a specific type of build. Let me explain. The first build that we're going to be talking about is the most consistent and controlled, but you do have to be very proactive to use it. The death by 1,000. I'm not good at elements. I'm not good at the naming. You guys can help me, and we could just call it that in the community. I don't know. This is something that's amazing for mid game and honestly late game, if I'm honest. Essentially, it uses the low cooldown skills, but trust me, there are some skills that are much better than others. The skills you are currently seeing on screen are the ones that are much better. Whether it's this nature attack that can pass through enemies and has a pretty good AoE hit, or if it's this fire attack that just has a lot of base damage but less AoE, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of things in this category that are absolutely worth it, and they have absurdly low cooldowns, so you can spam them like crazy. But not only do they have a really low CT or cooldown, but they also have an absurdly low animation cast, which is amazing for survivability. You can essentially backpedal, quickly activate this ability, your PAL will spew out an attack and then run back with you if, of course, you are mounted. You can be running backwards and then quickly tapping your abilities, and your PAL will just immediately throw all of them out and then immediately start to run again. He's not stuck in this animation cast where he has to prime himself, then get up from the priming, and you're just gonna get smashed in the face 6 times while they're doing that. Not great. You can just cast and get going, and that's so valuable, especially when fighting boss fights and so on. And like I said, even if some skills say they have low CT, sometimes it doesn't actually end up functioning like that. You're staying in an animation for 4 seconds, and yet your skill comes back in 2, and yet you can't activate it until the animation is over. And I'd be fine with that, but unfortunately they don't balance the skill to be worth that. It's not like the skills that stick you in a long-ass animation give you more damage. Rarely is that actually the case, which is hilarious. But what makes this build especially amazing for beginners is that it doesn't do an absolute dumping of damage. It slowly whittles down your target, consistently melting their health to the point in which then you have them at low health and you can capture them. So it's really good for early play. And honestly, late game play, because we'll talk about that with some of the other ones. But needless to say, this is the only build in this video that actually does that. All the other ones are mainly trying to kill whatever you're shooting at or firing at or icing at as quick as possible. So it's always good at least to have one of these, especially on your mount. However, there is a problem with this. All the gameplay you're currently seeing is mounted damage. The only negative for this build is that you have to be proactive, meaning you have to be mounting your PAL and activating the skills back to back to back, because unfortunately the AI in this game likes to position itself, then attack. Position itself, then attack. Rather than attack, 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 and just button smash until everything is constantly depleted. Also, you never run out of stamina, by the way, if you just completely keep sending it. Eventually you think you'd get tired, but they don't, which is really nice. So you can always keep spamming your skills. Even though you're getting really close to the bottom of your stamina bar, spam away. But again, the weakness is that your pals won't have it programmed in their head to spam all of their abilities on cooldown. It'll still be faster, but not as fast as you spamming them. And if you're gonna go for a build where your pals can do something without you, then you should absolutely go with the second build we're gonna talk about. This is the most damage capable build by far, simply called the Nuke. Again, I don't know what you want from me. I've been in the Borderlands community for a while. Do I want to call it like murder Nuke? This one, I'm sure anyone at Endgame can kind of piece together. But maybe you're just like me and didn't know something that is absolutely crucial to this kind of build. Build uses high cooldown but high power rating skills. However, a lot of the high power skills are actually not that high power. All right, so I mentioned the CTR and like the power score is really weird. What I'm meaning by that is this. That we have a water attack which hits once for 400 damage. Pretty okay, but why wouldn't I just use a really short cooldown one that hits for 100, but I can hit it every couple seconds and I can easily get up to that damage number and then some, given I'm not waiting on cooldown forever, right? But the reason why this build exists is because there are some outliers, such as Fireball, which not only hits with a massive impact, but then has a couple of following impacts that are really, really good. And with everything else I'm about to tell you, it all kind of makes sense, at least when it comes to these skills we're going to talk about. The 3 skills you're currently seeing on screen are the ones I think you should shoot for. There might be other better ones. We'll talk about this a little bit at the very end of the video. Might be some better ones, but these ones absolutely cook. Okay, especially the ice one. The ice one was by far the strangest one we've ended up testing. This ice ability hits twice, and each time it hits really, really hard. I think it was around like 800, so basically it's doing like 2,000 damage per cast. And you get 2 of them. In fact, you get 2 of all of these skills you're currently seeing. All these skills are doing 2,000 damage or something absurd. So how do you get 2 activations of each one of these skills? Well, that was something I didn't know. That was kind of the tip I mentioned early on that I don't know if a lot of people know this. I certainly didn't. Do you know you have 2 cooldowns? A cooldown when you are mounting your pal and you are activating his abilities, you are activating his abilities, and then you can dismount, and as long as your pal's unaggressive, he will spam out the same abilities that you just cast that should be on cooldown. He will cast them again. I don't know if this is a bug. It's still in the game, and the game's out for like a month and a half or something. So yeah, I think this is what's supposed to be the case. Kind of makes sense. It incentivizes 2 ways of playing. You're not just supposed to be mounting your pal and using them. You're supposed to actually be jumping off of them, letting them cook, and then you jump on them to help as well. So again, you have 6 skills to spam, but this makes the whole nuke process really simple. Jump on your pal, activate the abilities, dump them all out. Some have longer animations than others, but whatever. As soon as you're done, jump off of your pal, and then he will spam away, and then you're good to go. Then you have the choice of either having another mount that you can do the same thing with, or have a normal Pokemon that you can just throw out and hope that he quickly spams both of the abilities, or have another mount that has the previous build that we just talked about. Really low cooldowns, best for, you actually firing, so you can actually have the best of both worlds. Honestly, I think a lot of people could get a value out of just taking these skills that I'm showing you guys, and then just putting them on any of your pals that are hopefully high level, and hopefully have some decent attacks scaling on them, in terms of traits and all that stuff. But again, these skills on screen were by far the best impact hit that you could possibly get. Again, you can see a skill that says power 160. It does not mean that it is doing better than a rare, which is actually kind of nice to see. I like the fact that there are like special skills that are just good. You don't have to have a legendary skill for it to be godly, or an epic skill for it to be godly. In fact, a lot of times, by sifting through all the muck, you find a lot of diamonds, and that's what we've kind of done here. And lastly, the fun builds. These are the skills that I think are worth it, as far as like are doing something fun and interesting, and are also not unarguably terrible and the worst thing to use possible. They are that happy medium of they are good enough and they are sick as hell, okay? One of those skills is called Fire Breath. Fire Breath can be found, I believe, in every single element. This is a build that's aimed towards you not being mounted on your mounted pal. It works really good for you actually basically gaining aggro from the enemy and allowing your pal just to like flamethrower them down and melt them down. So long as you're taking aggro away from your pal so he has enough time to activate the skill and recover from the animation without getting walloped too much, then you'll be good to go. And this is one of the coolest, most badass thing to see your pal just fire breathing, especially if it's like a little tiny guy. It's just out there breathing like a demonstrous amount of fire out of his mouth. It's awesome. Anyway, all right, really quick here, just some honorary mentions I thought were pretty good, especially when you're just testing a lot of them. By the way, this is not all of the skills. This is as many as I was able to collect over my time farming, which is a whole inventory full basically of skills. There is more than just that, but we were able to kind of get access into each one of their things. Oftentimes there's duplicates, like the breath is usually like ice breath, dragon breath, fire breath. So there's variants in that way, but we were able to kind of dip into I think most of them. But all you need to do is place down a dummy, which is just wood and stone or whatever. Again, I just want to know it was decent enough to get me by, and then I'll test the rest of them myself. But again, the things we mentioned to take care of you. Honorary mentions that we did not mention is Seed Mine. Seed Mine, oh my god, if it worked slightly differently, it would be hands down the best thing in the game. Frankly, it already is really, really, really good, especially for fighting bigger bosses. Seed Mine essentially throws down a bunch of seeds. They all deal a crazy amount of damage, 50 per pop, and there's like 16 on the field at once. And you can actually detonate them if you get close enough, but it's better to let the boss try to detonate them. You trying to get cute and like get close enough to then detonate them near the boss, it's fucky. Don't just, yeah. Also, it comes back so fast. By the time the mines detonate, it already has reset. So it basically has 100% uptime and it fires out fast. It also has crazy range, which I didn't know about. It's really, really good, especially just to have on one of your other secondary pals. Is it better than the ice one we showed, which is basically like a nuke? Maybe. It depends on what you're doing. If you want a pal that's consistently outputting good damage, or a pal that just drops a nuke, which basically is all that damage at once. Again, there are certain builds where you could like hyperscale the attack where you want to have that one base number as high as possible, but that's all build nonsense. Okay, another video. Okay, one I just thought was really nice in general is Bubble Blast. It's kind of neat. Also, its cooldown, not the worst, 13%. It's okay, deals a little bit of damage. Oftentimes, the bubbles don't work. By the way, did I mention that there is a handful of skills that just don't work when you use them mounted? You hit the button, and like the ice spear just goes left. And you're like, I wasn't looking that way, and tough shit. Get hit. I was gonna say Acid Rain, but Acid Rain just never fucking hits the target. If the enemy is like slowly walking to the right, it's never gonna hit. Pain. Anyways, Lightning Strike I thought was pretty neat. It was just a straight line of electricity, pretty good if you wanted AoE, and it comes back in like 16 seconds. Ultimately, not that bad. Tri Lightning would have been worth mentioning, but it takes so long for the animation to cast. You're sitting there like a sitting duck just getting walloped while he's doing fucking 5 damage or some stupid. It's not that much. No, I don't know where my one is that I really like. Yeah, okay, I'll find it. Okay, this one on screen I thought was actually really good. It just sends out a bunch of like electric probes that essentially there's like, you fire like 15 sometimes, and then other times it feels like you fire like 5, 6 maybe. But regardless, this one I think is deceptively strong because a lot of times the damage numbers gets lost in the sauce when it comes to actually hitting, because I think the game only generates so many damage numbers, or it gets lost in the crazy bright effects. But yes, those are the ones I think are worth it. Slap those on your secondary pals and you're gonna have a fun time, especially with the shock value of all of them just being really pretty to look at. Lastly, if you are brand new to the game and you're just binge watching a bunch of guides, how you attain all of these skills is by farming Skil Fruit. Skil Fruit is located on the map. Essentially, I would highly advise you just go to the palworld.gg, open up the map setting, highlight tree fruit or skill tree, and then just run around to those locations, grab the items. These 2 locations right here are where epic spawn, which is actually less like super huge than you might think, because again, a lot of the epics were okay. There was only a handful that were like, holy shit, okay, this is a big deal. A lot of them, they're not worth their animation casting time. That's just gonna get you sucker punched like 20 times. Their damage is, it doesn't make much sense. Like, it's massively AoE oriented. It kind of makes sense when you take into account the like weaknesses I just have never really felt like the weaknesses are necessary in the game yet. Maybe when they release like a super hardcore mode, maybe, but we're playing base game and it's not excessively necessary yet. Also, I think you could just scale up your attack a lot with like the condensing and the traits, and you could just get power that way. But again, this is just a surface level video. I'm not trying to go into the nitty gritty of optimizing every tiny thing, just trying to get you enough to definitely get by. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, you'll notice that we did not talk about PAL specific traits, which by the way, there's PAL specific traits. Anubis has a couple. A lot of them are specific into whatever kind of base elemental effect they usually have. My goated goat PAL mount had one that actually was pretty crazy. It gives him like a crazy stride where he does like a charge that can help you like map jump the game. The mount moves absurdly fast anyway. I don't know if it's really necessary if you build him with Runner and Swift, which I have, which is why we're cooking so goddamn fast. Please, 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 lovely Palworld community, yes, I'm talking to you sitting there. If I've missed something, this is honestly just me putting out the call that I wanted as far as what the video I wanted to find was. Are there any skill fruit that I maybe missed? One that I just didn't have at my disposal and I couldn't really show you guys. I tried to find as many as possible and I burned all of them into one mount that I'm going to replace because it's not perfect yet. But if anyone has found a really, really good skill that is ideally, it's not even epic, but it's just rare and it hits like a goddamn truck, then that would be awesome. But these are the ones that I could find. I know I'm not the best. I shouldn't be the messenger for this. I'm not the data guy. I'm not the math guy. I just want to get an answer that's good enough to get me by. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I love you to bits. Hopefully I can see you again. Thank you for putting up with me and goodbye, my friends.